Chaco National Historical Park is located in northwestern New Mexico. It was the center of a far-reaching trade network in its classic period from 1020 to 1120. Goods were traded within the Chacoan system, but also with groups as far south as Mexico. Over 400 miles of prehistoric roadway are known in this area of New Mexico. This impressive system not only carried goods, but it linked Chaco to outlying communities and resource areas and connected those outlying communities. Some segments appear to lack a clear destination. One of the longest headed north towards the prehistoric communities of Salmon and Aztec. These were not mere foot trails, but planned and engineered roads that required significant labor to build and maintain. Many archaeologists now think that some road features were not just to get from one place to another, but reflected the Puebloan worldview. The road system is most elaborate near great houses, where double and quadruple road segments may have related to ritual and ceremony. Roads bound together the culture by reflecting these ancient people's social organization. This is the map of the Chaco National Historical Park. It shows you where the different great houses are located in relation to one another. Chaco Canyon's high desert landscape, long winters, short growing seasons, and marginal rainfall make it an unlikely place for the major center of ancestral Puebloan culture to take root and flourish. Yet this valley was the center of a thriving culture 1,000 years ago. Its monumental architecture, far-reaching commerce, and complex community life and social organization bear witness to a remarkable cultural achievement. The Chacoan people's culture began in the mid-800s and persisted over 300 years. We see this in the grand scale of its architecture. Using masonry techniques unique for their time, they built massive multi-story stone buildings called great houses with hundreds of rooms, far larger than anything they had previously built. Buildings were planned from the start. Rooms weren't just added to existing buildings as needed. Construction of some buildings spanned decades or even centuries. Each great house is unique, but all share recognizably Chacoan architectural features. In the mid to late 800s, the great houses of Pueblo Bonita and Una Vida were built, followed by Chetoquetl, Pueblo Alto, and others. They were often oriented to solar, lunar, and cardinal directions. Lines of sight between them enabled communication. Sophisticated astronomical markers, communication features, water control devices, and formal earthen mounds surround them. They were set in a landscape surrounded by sacred mountains, mesas, and shrines that still have deep spiritual meaning for their descendants. By 1050, Chaco was the ceremonial, administrative, and economic center of the San Juan Basin with a large sphere of influence. Roads linked dozens of Chaco Canyon great houses to over 150 great houses in the region. We don't think great houses were traditional farming villages with large populations, but probably impressive examples of public architecture used for ceremony, commerce, and trading when temporary populations came to the canyon for these events. What lay at the heart of this great social experiment? Pueblo descendants say that Chaco was a special gathering place where many peoples and clans converged to share ceremonies, traditions, and knowledge. Chaco is central to the origins of several Navajo clans and ceremonies. It is also an enduring enigma for researchers. Was Chaco the hub of a turquoise trading network set up to get macaws, copper bells, shells, and other commodities from distant lands? Did Chaco distribute food and resources to growing populations when the climate failed them? Was Chaco the so-called center place, binding the region together with a shared vision? We may never know Chaco's full significance. Chacoans were skilled masons. Using stone tools, they erected vast communal buildings. Their techniques evolved over centuries. The earliest dwellings were built with simple walls, 1 stone thick, and bonded with generous courses of mud mortar. The oldest walls in Pueblo Bonito used this type of masonry. This shot of Pueblo Bonito shows how much mud masonry they actually did use. As Chacoans began to build higher and more extensively, they used walls with thick inner cores of rubble and thin veneers of facing stone. These tapered as they rose, showing the planning that went into the large-scale building in classic times. An early example has large tabular sandstone blocks chinked with smaller stones set in mortar. Half of Pueblo Bonito's ground floor was built in masonry styles 3 and 4 in the late 1000s, used at roughly the same time. The patterns are attractive as is, but Chacoans covered most stonework with plaster. This is an example of masonry styles 3 and 4 found in Chetro Kettle. The last distinctive style, Michelmo, appears in King Quetzal and other early 1100s architecture. King Quetzal's walls had thin inner cores of rubble and thick outer veneers of shaped sandstone, resembling masonry of the Mesa Verde region. This example of the Michelmo style is found at Casa Roconda. The great house closest to the visitor center is Una Vida. Its construction was underway by the mid-800s and went on until the mid-1100s. At the same time, Pueblo Bonito and Penasco Blanco were being built. The structure has about 150 rooms and 5 kivas. It is an excellent example of a mostly unexcavated site. The core of the Chacoan complex lies further down the canyon. The largest of its great houses is Pueblo Bonito, the center of the Chacoan world. Planned and then built in stages, Pueblo Bonito was lived in from the mid-800s to the 1200s. It eventually towered 4 stories high with over 600 rooms and 40 kivas. Pueblo Bonito, one of the most extensively excavated and studied areas in North America, is sacred to many American Indian groups. These enormous blocks of sandstone are all that remains of threatening rock, which collapsed January 22, 1941, following a year of especially heavy rains. The rockfall destroyed about 30 rooms that had been excavated in the 1920s. Prior to its collapse, the rock was a detached segment of the cliff wall, separated by a wide crack. The rock measured about 97 feet high, 140 feet long, and 34 feet thick, and weighed an estimated 30,000 tons. Great houses were likely used on a seasonal basis to accommodate temporary influxes of people visiting the canyon for ceremonies, trading, and other special events. Plazas are important areas at modern pueblos where many activities take place: public ceremonies, trading, community gatherings, and daily activities. Today, researchers estimate the year-round population for Pueblo Bonito at 50 to 100 people, and that for Chaco Canyon as a whole at 2,000 to 6,000. They base their estimates on the number of habitation rooms, rooms with fire pits, and quality of pottery vessels, as well as the amount of land nearby. Here are some of the original woodwork that was between floors in Pueblo Bonito. Many areas in Chaco were excavated, studied, and then filled in with soil to protect the structure. The large, round, underground structure is a great kiva. Modern Puebloans use kivas for religious worship, preparation, dance, prayer, vigils, public gatherings, and other activities. Great kivas are found in nearly every Chacoan community built between 900 and 1200. They are often within or near the plazas of great houses. Some are along roads and on prominent ridges and hills. Others were central to communities. The unique design, size, and central position of great kivas suggests a ceremonial purpose, public gatherings, places for communities and the region. Great kivas, like modern kivas, could have accommodated hundreds of people. Great kivas contain highly standardized architectural features: a low masonry bench around the base of the room, raised floor vaults, a raised fire box, and deflector. Pits for seating 4 upright wooden posts or masonry pillars used to support the roof, and an antechamber and entryway at the plaza level. These features are present in great kivas throughout the Southwest and may reflect shared ceremonial practices or beliefs. There were 4 great kivas in the plaza of Pueblo Bonito, although all were not used at the same time. There were doorways throughout the structure of great houses that allowed people to go from one section or room to another. They were very small, as you will see. This window is believed to have something to do with summer solstice, since that is when the light shines directly through it. Begun about 1020, Chaco saw major building within 30 years, and then modifications in the 1100s. An estimated 500 rooms and 16 kivas are here. An immense elevated earthen plaza rises above the landscape. Chaco is a Chacoan great house, as in the case with most other great houses in the canyon. Its original structure was modest, beginning with a single-story room block around AD 1010. It grew to become a monumental structure that covered almost 3 acres by the early 1100s. The overall grand plan of Chaco is a D-shaped, with the front wall of the plaza forming the arc of the D. There is an estimated 500 rooms in the site, approximately 225 ground floor rooms and 275 second and third floor rooms.